welcome to the Stellify podcast. I've got a very exciting guest for me anyway, because I've been really looking forward to speaking to Colin. I caught Colin on Aeon Byte speaking to Miguel not too long ago. I had a good chat with Miguel on the last podcast. I seem to be trying to pinch his guest, but Colin was in particular someone I really wanted to speak to. And the reason it excites me so much, Colin, is well, I've been going through and integrating, I would presume, and going through that journey of my shadow. I had what people would call a nervous breakdown, if you like, in the early 22, and it was down to a lot of it was exhaustion. We had a pub, and we signed for that pub the day they shut the pubs in the UK for the pandemic, and I wouldn't play the game that the UK government were trying to throw out there because I could see what they were doing, and we became a hub in the not just the local area, but in quite a part of the UK as well. People would travel to the pub. It gave people a sanctuary. But because I did that, we were in a small country village in Lancashire, and it's a beautiful village, but they weren't too pleased I was the super spreader. And numerous things came to the point where I ended up being a little bit exhausted. We lost everything effectively. We lost our home, we lost our business, we lost our home, and it was a tough ride.
Wow. Well, you'll have to tell me how that happened, but
yeah. So I went on this journey myself. So I had this what people would say is a nervous breakdown and nervous exhaustion, and to help my family, because I care for my partner as well, who's disabled, and we've got 2 children and things like that. It was like, right, I need to get a job. So away I went and got myself a job, and we moved into this other house, this rental property, and within a month, if even a month, I just couldn't do it. I was in to the point where I found myself on the kitchen floor, couldn't dress myself, couldn't wash myself, was in absolute bits. But speaking with the doctor, as you do, because I was in a job and I needed to provide a doctor's note, if you like, to the employment. He was obviously going to try and get me prescribed on some kind of medication, and I've been there before, Colin, with antidepressants, and this time it was a no, and it was I made this intention. The clear intention was to fix myself and then help others who were in a similar situation or find themselves going in that situation. Once I've got the tools, I'll be able to help them with their toolkit, and that's where I went. So I went into my shadow. Didn't even realize what I was doing, to be honest with you. But I was at a point of recapitulation, if you like, and going through parts of my life and finding love as well and understanding why I behaved in certain ways, why others behaved in certain ways, and bringing forgiveness and love to situations. So long story short, obviously, when I heard your podcast with Miguel, I was very excited because I thought, this is wonderful. You know, this guy is basically helping people through what I'd kind of just gone through, and I'm still doing it. I think it's a journey that will continue.
Keeps going.
But yeah, exactly. So, but you just said it, everything. And I got very excited that I need to get in touch with Colin. I need to have a chat. And I know you've had, because we were going to have a chat early in January, and I know you've had a really difficult time recently. And if you want to talk about that, that's up to you. But obviously, that would have brought more challenges, brother, wouldn't it?
It's part of my movie now. So I've got to make sense out of it. So my wife of 12 years, my friend of 17 years, and my partner in all of this shadow work theory that we had been working on and practice that we'd been doing, she passed away about a month ago now. And she had a cancer tumor, a cervical cancer tumor. And I think it was something that was old, actually, because she had been diagnosed with cervical cancer 25 years prior. And but she beat it back with nutrition and just a whole her whole healthy lifestyle and her mindset. But yeah, so this thing emerged or reemerged in late 2022, and then caused a lot of pain and inflammation in her pelvis and midsection. And she dealt with that for 2 years. And we just stayed on the healing path. We did all kinds of things. She did do some chemo radiation, 7 weeks of it, just to give it a try. That didn't do anything. We did all kinds of other treatments, and it really caused us to up our game with the psychological work that we were doing. But then about 3 or 4 months ago, the pain just ramped up, and her body just started actually, very quickly started shutting down. And all kinds of old symptoms that she had had as a child started coming back. And it was just very clear that her soul was saying, okay, I'm done with this vehicle. And so she passed away pretty quickly and fairly easily. But it was a gigantic shock to me, because I was so attached to her, and we were really, I mean, we can talk about this, about how that, in a relationship, the person is not just your friend, your partner, but you're also projecting onto the other person. So you're projecting, with a woman, a man is projecting mother, he's projecting daughter, on top of all the heartstrings that you have tied with that person. And then she was my bandmate. We did music together. I mean, we were just completely integrated as a single unit. And then to have that person, quickly pass away. I mean, it happens all the time in the world. I mean, people die in plane crashes or auto accidents, or, things, where they die even more suddenly. But so it's not unnatural, and it's not uncommon, but it is something that was new to me, because I still haven't lost either of my parents, and I hadn't lost anyone that close to me up until now. I'd lost grandparents, but they weren't as close to me. So it was it's a giant, it's a major challenge for me. And now I have to go back through all of our suppositions about the work that we've been doing, the stuff I put in my books and that I've been lecturing about, and everything has to be reanalyzed in a new light now. And so, and then on top of that, I'm putting together a film about her life, because she was she was a performance artist, a musician, and she's very prolific and incredibly talented. And on top of the psychospiritual work, the alchemy, we call it, that we'd been doing. So there's a lot to share about her and her life. So I'm having to go through all this old material, and I have a lot of it. And so then that's challenging me and making me rethink, everything. And I think I'll stop with that right there. But I'm completely open to talking about it, because it has to be discussed. This is a major milestone in my life. And so my whole life has changed because of this. And so, yeah, I have to be able to talk about it and make sense out of it.
I know when I read your post on Facebook, because we connected on Facebook, and I could see, just reading it, I could even feel it, Colin. I could feel the love that you clearly have for Melissa. And then I think you posted a video of her performing, and she was incredible, wasn't she?
She's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And obviously you're so close, and do you feel that you're always going to be close though? That's the thing. It's like I know it's so difficult. Death is a difficult thing, isn't it? Because it's such an unknown, isn't it? It's like,
Mm.
does she come to you in any other shape or form at this stage?
So far, there was one. I'd been asking for her to come to me in my dreams, and it hadn't been happening. But about a week ago, it did.
Oh,
And I had asked a couple nights in a row for her to do that, but this one night I left the door open, just as more of a signal. And I had two dreams, one right after the other. I actually put those on Facebook as well, where in one of the dreams she was in bed with me and she sat up in bed, and she was in the condition that she was in before, in the months prior, where she was having different symptoms, stomach issues, diarrhea, different things like this. And she got up and went to the bathroom. This is in the dream, and I was sitting there in the dream going, hey, wait a minute, how did this happen? How could she have returned? Just trying to figure out how this could be. And then a second dream that happened, I think about an hour later, because I woke up after each of these dreams. I was being she wasn't in the room, but I could feel her presence was in the room. And there was a force that was pulling me from my side of the bed over to her side of the bed. And so I was just wrapped up in all the sheets
wow,
and blankets, getting pulled over to her side of the bed. And it
wow,
was kind of scary, actually. It's like something was pulling me. And I woke up after that, and that was kind of shocking.
wow.
So those two dreams happened. I have not heard from her other than those dreams in any other fashion, and it's as if she's just not interested in hanging around. She was done with this, and we can talk more about the kind of archetypes that she was identified with, or you could say the
Mhm.
programs that were kind of back there running, that
Okay.
were shaping her life. And so I think she just kind of just she was done with this movie, and she was like, okay, time to go now. Because she had a very dynamic and a very energetic life.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I think she's I've been watching these near death experience testimonies online, and a lot of them are very similar, and it's been very helpful to kind of hear what people say about you know what they experience when their consciousness leaves the body. And
Yeah.
so that's been helpful, actually, too, to listen to those kinds of things.
Yeah, there seems to be the continuous of an individualization, or your individual person still, even though you're not in the human form as such. That consciousness it never ends, does it? That's going to
it
continue.
It seems so. I mean, I was always open to the idea, but now this is another thing that happens when death comes close to you, is that, you can really feel where the origins of religion come from when you experience a death like this. And there's people that experience it even more tragically. They're in war zones, and genocides and all kinds of things. And so um this it all of your questions about life, the afterlife, the meaning of life, whether the soul is immortal, and all these kinds of things start coming to you, and you have to figure it out.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It is. It is such an unknown, but yet there's so many testimonies, and obviously, your ego wants to carry on anyway, doesn't it? It wants to do that.
Yeah, you
And
want to make meaning out of it. It's you just can't
yeah,
help. Your mind just keeps. I mean, even if you understand that you really should try to stay in present moment awareness as much as possible, and not fall into all these mind loops. It's very difficult when you've had a tragedy like this, and then you notice that your mind wants to make sense out of it. It wants to go back over it. It wants to try to analyze the situation and say, what does this mean? How could, or at least somebody, it maybe not with everybody, at least, but with somebody who's very introspective like me, I'm trying to make meaning out of it. So yeah, so it's just constant.
So this is another chapter then, really.
Yeah, it's another chapter, and it's I'm going to learn a lot out of this. I already have, and then I'm going to put that in the film. I'm going to put that in writing and in talking, like I'm doing now, and it's going to just. I feel like Melissa has a legacy that is going to live on, and so now instead of having her in my life as a muse and an actual influence in my life, she lives on in another way, and it sort of actually gives me a certain amount of freedom or space to do things that I couldn't do or didn't even think of doing when I had a life with her. And so now it's like I'm open to the idea that, this was, you want to say something simple like it's all for a reason, but, but yes, that was a phase, that was a chapter, that was a scene in my movie. It was a 12-year long, actually I knew Melissa for 16 or 17 years, but really had a relationship with her for 12 years. So it's a 12-year scene in my movie. And that's not the end of my movie. And so now how does that influence the rest of my movie of life? So that's, it's to be determined.
100% it is. And like you were saying about being present, you can only do that anyway, and keep going the way you are, and you're on that hero's journey anyway.
Yeah.
And like you said, Melissa probably is going to provide you another part of a hero's journey where you've got another dedication, another fire in your belly, really, to ensure that there's a legacy there.
That is going on. That is going on. I definitely have, I feel like almost a duty, because I really was her. I always felt like I was, I was always her best fan, her supporter, her, music producer, bandmate, band manager. And, I was never really good with promotion and marketing, but to the degree I could do that, I was doing that for her. And so I was always, because I just always saw her talent and always wanted her to be, well, I could go into kind of another direction with this, but let me just say that I was always supporting her, and so I feel like at this stage now, I think I'm still supporting her. I feel like her work is not complete yet, so it's my job to kind of complete it, and then to stay open for whatever the spirit of her life is to do for me as I go forward. So, yeah, it's kind of a duty, I think.
I can understand that. I mean, when I was going through, so part of my journey with my partner, so I nearly lost her a couple of times on this journey, and it was down to big pharma, in a big way. So there was a period of time where I was kind of waiting for it to happen. It was like I was almost expecting it to happen and waiting for and having to protect the children. And we went through a difficult period of where she was basically. Well, it's a long story short, but I'll say that she was prescribed a drug that to help with certain pain levels, which she'd been dealing with for many years, and the drug made her suicidal for about 6 months, and she attempted twice. And it was Strangely, the drug's called pregabalin. It's an epileptic drug, and
Oh,
interestingly, she was seeing, or she was having visions of a goblin. So it was like pre-goblin, and this goblin would be telling her how to commit suicide and
oh,
why. Uh,
wow,
and
right.
yeah, and it would
No,
appear.
I'm familiar with those kinds of entities. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's it's very interesting.
yeah. I mean, we're very fortunate, obviously, that we got through it. It was one of the hardest 6 months that, as a family, we'd faced. Um, and poor Lou, she ended up sectioned because of it, to get the drug out of her system to a point where she could come home. The drug took her personality. She wasn't Lou for that period of time. She completely changed. Um,
Right.
and it was part of our journey. So I had a spiritual awakening back in 2012, where my red pill moment happened, if you like,
Okay. Right. Right.
and which incidentally, I must say that to anyone that's listening, your red pill, um, there's a red pill video you've got on your channel. Let
Yeah.
me just
Two
find it.
paths for the red pilled initiate.
Yes,
The-
2 paths for the red
t-
pills initiate. It is absolutely hands down the best way of explaining the awakening
I'm glad it
process.
appeals to you. It appeals to some people, right? The people who are kind of on the same path we are.
Yeah, it's absolutely perfect, and I think this is where a lot of my listeners will resonate greatly with what you're offering here, and what I'm trying to offer, I suppose, is this awakening process is difficult, and when you start seeing the world, your worldview changes pretty instantly. And I know, listening to yourself, I think 9/11 was a big thing for you.
Hmm.
I presume you saw Loose Change.
Oh yeah, that's
Um,
how I started. Actually, that was the film that red pilled me.
the Loose Change. So yeah,
Loose Change second edition, I think. Yeah.
so it was really interesting because mine's very similar on that level. So I had this. So I went through a divorce, right, Colin? So I had this trauma, and I went through this divorce. I had a very difficult marriage, by the way. It was 10, 11 years of complete control, which was
Mm.
great in a way, because when it came to 2020, I refused to be controlled. So it was like,
Oh,
I've been through that. So it was like, I'm not going through that again.
yeah.
Um,
Right.
but um, so I had this traumatic experience, if you like, through this divorce, and I moved to a small house with my daughter, and
Uh-huh.
I was struggling financially, really badly struggling financially at the
Right.
time. And a friend of mine who's a psychic medium said to me, "You need to ask your angels for help." And I remember saying to him, "That's the most fucking stupid thing I've ever heard in my life.
Right.
I,
Right.
I'm not doing that. That's stupid." But
Uh-huh.
anyway, he said, "No." He said, "Say it tonight when your daughter's in bed, and say it out loud." So I
Yeah.
did. I asked for
Right.
help. The next day, I'm driving to my parents' house with my daughter in the car, and on the dashboard was 1111. And then on the clock in the middle of the center console was 1111. And I thought,
Right.
something wrong with my car. And I pulled over, turned the engine off, switched it back on, and all these ones are still there. And I thought, that's weird. Carried on driving, got to my parents' house, got my phone, sat down, going through Facebook as you do, and this thing popped up and it said, "If you see 111, your angels are listening." And I went, all the hairs stood up, and I was like, "What is this all
There you
about?"
go.
And then I went, "Right, I need to have a look into this." So I started doing some research at 1111, and obviously,
Right.
finding out that it's a phenomenon that's happening all over the world and blah blah blah. But then I actually found a guy. It's an interview on YouTube. A guy called Rick Clay. He's a guy from Bradford, and he was
Mhm.
explaining the meaning of 1111 in such a way. But it was on a big interview, which is about 3 hours long, with Red Ice.
Oh yeah, red ice. Yep.
Yeah, and Rick Clay sadly, mysteriously passed away about 2 or 3 weeks after that interview. And that interview, he dives deep into this world. So that
Mhm.
1111 took me to Rick Clay, which then opened my eyes to the madness of this realm that we find ourselves in. And then a bit further down the line, Loose Change came about, and it was like, what are we in?
Yeah,
Where are we?
yeah. Yeah, well, with the 1111, it didn't, you could have had a similar synchronicity with any other kind of symbol. So I think there's significance to 1111, but there's, I think, even more significance to the fact that you just had a synchronicity around that that experience of asking for help, which was something that was moving you into an unknown area that you were uncomfortable with, and then you were shown by the universe, or however this works, that you need to go in that direction.
Yeah.
And then you did, and then you went into because not everybody goes into the red pill side of things. They can have a spiritual experience like that, and then they go into the new age movement or something else, or they go back to church again, and they get back into their early religious faith, or they can go in different directions with that. But some people are inclined to go down this red pilled or shadow path. And and so we are a certain kind of person. And then there's, like I said in that video, the two paths for the red pilled initiate are, one, the path of what I call the culture warrior, or the red pill culture warrior. So that's the producers of Loose Change, and all the people who are in the 9/11 truth movement, or who are basically online activists to share the truth about the dark side of reality with other people. And that's sort of an exoteric or extroverted mode. And then there's the inward facing mode, which is it's a self-healing mode. It's a shamanic mode. It's I think I called it the psycho-spiritual alchemist, is I think the term I used in there. So that's the person that says, okay, well, if there's all this, basically recognizes that there's a correlation between everything that's dark in the world with everything that's dark within yourself. And so in some way, the red pill initiation usually points you outward at first, but then what'll end up happening is that you end up having some kind of a little dark night of the soul, because you're like, okay, oh my God, what's going on? What is this world? I didn't know about all this. How am I being manipulated, and all of this? And you might go through a grieving period and all of that. And then it kind of opens you up to yourself, because you recognize, consciously or not, you recognize that, how could I have not seen this before? And there's all kinds of ways in which you can have that awakening. Like I actually had that in another relationship breakup that I had before Melissa 20 years ago, where the relationship fell apart very quickly. And then I looked back and I said, oh, well, here was a red flag. Here was a red flag. I should have seen this. I should have seen this. And I realized, oh, I was involved in so much projection and so much cognitive dissonance that I was unable to see all those red flags. Well, it's the same thing with the red pill awakening, where you start to see these evidence of widespread evil. And then you go, wow, how could I have not seen that? And if you're an introspective and curious person and prone to self-analysis, then you're going to say, well, what's wrong with me to where I was walking around with these blinders on for so long, when this is so obvious? What I've found about the world and the evil in the world, it's so obvious now that I can see it. What is it about me that was blocking this? And what is it about everyone else around me who's still blocking this? Yeah. What's going on with the psyche itself? And then you start going, okay, and it kind of leads you down the rabbit hole into your own shadow, into your own cognitive dissonance. And then you have to pull out the personal correlate to that evil, because there's external evil in the world, but then there's your contribution to it. There's your shadow. And so then it turns out that, that is the first step in alchemy. And it's really the first step in any truly beneficial inner work. So it just, and now you're on the self-healer path. Now you're on the alchemist path. And now you haven't even, you're already ostracized when you're a red pillar, just culturally, you don't have that many friends. But then now when you're really inwardly oriented like this, now you're an even smaller group. And so it's quite a path and quite a journey.
It's a ride. Oh, I remember after Loose Change going to my parents' house, and I said to my mum, Mum, it's not right, this, 9/11, it's not what we think it is. And I went up the Twin Towers the year they came down, and I was in New York City the year after for over Christmas and so in fact the year they came down, I was in New York for 2 weeks over the Christmas period. But the year before I'd been to the Twin Towers. Sorry, I got that bit mixed up. I was very emotionally charged when that happened, because I had an affection for that area for whatever reason. I remember spending time on my own round there, and so when it happened, I remember switching Sky Sports or Sky News on, with my friends in the house at the time, and almost cheering on the attack in Afghanistan that happened pretty much straight away.
Me too, actually.
Yeah. And that's not like me at all, but it was like, okay, well, this has got to happen. And then when you realize what really happened, it's like, wow, we have been duped.
Ooh. And then you start thinking, how many times have we been duped? How much of this is going on?
Yeah.
And my whole journey from that, I think I saw that film in, I think it was December of 2004. And then I just completely dedicated my spare time to researching 9/11. And then I found all the other New World Order stuff and all that, and Alex Jones and all the other so-called conspiracy theorists. I found all their material and just really went down that road. And I took some other paths. I did. I found myself in this group that was like kind of a. It's another story. But I ended up studying the mortgage-backed securities fraud and all the stuff that was happening after the 2008 financial crisis. And then I ended up being sort of a lay expert in that area. And then I helped homeowners sue banks. And so I did that for several years. And then I just, and then I had that. When was that relationship breakup that I had? Oh, that was actually earlier. So, I think what I was doing is it was actually this, now I remember now, it was the same time. So I had this big breakup at the same time within months that I saw Loose Change and got red pilled. And so now I'm just in this total negrito. And I'm a professional musician and audio engineer, and I've just been doing that. That had been my primary focus. And then I had to switch over to this inner introspective. I was always introspective, but I really had to focus on myself and study myself. And so I guess I was kind of starting on the shadow work at that time. And I think I might have told Miguel this, that I started with Robert Johnson's book called Owning Your Own Shadow. And so that was probably around 2005 or so. And then it just slowly, at the same time as investigating 9/11 and all the New World Order stuff, I found Michael Tsarian and other kinds of spiritual red-pilled people, and just went in that direction. Then I started reading more Jungian books, Robert L. Moore, and all kinds of other Jungians. And I went down the Jungian path and just continued to kind of just go down that path of understanding the psyche and especially the shadow side, and just, everything that's in those 2 books that I've written, you can find that whole, you've seen it, everything that's in there is like sort of my whole path of trying to unravel how the shadow of the psyche works and how it interfaces with the rest of humanity.
Do you find that you kind of trust your journey on that as well, that things just come to you at the right time almost? That's how I found my journey. It's like, here you go, you're ready for this now. Here's this piece of the puzzle to play with.
That does go on. That is happening, and that is the main way that I'm getting steered, is through these occurrences that I have absolutely no control over. But that doesn't mean that the mind isn't constantly second guessing and fantasizing and planning and all of that. So there's all this mental planning going on, which really just gets in the way. And then there's these big changes that happen to you that they just come to you. And so it's like the better way would be to just stop all the thinking and just go for the ride without so much thinking and just be present. But it's difficult I know it's difficult for Westerners in general, but it's difficult for people who are naturally analytical.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. And I'm not a big thinker, but my brain never switches off. And it's always trying to find the negative in any situation at all.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I've been doing the inner work for a little while, and I've certainly gained enough tools to deal with my anxiety and my depression that I've suffered with in the past, and this, that, and the other. But even this week, I've still been battling stresses or financial stresses or whatever, and it comes up and you're projecting forward all the time, and the panics that happen, and it's the mind. It's your worst enemy at the best of times, and I like to get it on side. I think that's the key, really. If I can get my mind to be as on side as my heart, I think I'll be doing fine.
Well, sometimes it takes these kinds of tragedies to actually get your heart to catch up.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? And and then with well, I mean, it's I could say, well, you just got to meditate more or whatever, but that, and that is a good practice, and I do that. But it's just a management thing. You just have to. It's just like, you just have to manage the mind. You have to go, okay, I see when it's running away with ideas and fantasies, and you have to kind of reel it back in. And then it's going to go do its own thing again. You got to reel it back in. And then the more simple you can keep your life and your footprint in the world, just if you can just really try to simplify your life as much as possible and keep your environment as serene as possible, then have as few contracts with the matrix, so to speak, as you can. Then you're eliminating a lot of food for the mind.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, totally. One of the reasons why I started this channel, and it's a bit of a projection in itself, but again, it's part of my own hero's journey, I suppose. I had this thing where I thought, okay, so these elitist types, these these so-called global leaders or whatever they want to call themselves, they already have all the power, they already have all the money, and and they seem to be using all these dates and esoteric kind of things as well, rituals and whatever. So I'm like, well, what is it that they get off on? And again, this is where your work's so important again, because it's the shadow aspect of it all is they become that, don't they? It's almost they just, I don't know. Like I remember having you listening to your discussion, and you were talking about, Dick Cheney and and the Bushes and all these lot, that they become that. That's what they've become because it's took over them, really. And
identification with the shadow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
but they're also collectivists by nature. They're not individualists like we are. Some people are more inclined to be individualists, and then some people are more inclined to be collectivists. And so they're always collectivists. And so, kind of how people will, I mean, we can kind of see how this works at a lower level when you or a friend or family member joins a corporation, and the corporation is being run, kind of like, it's kind of psychopathic in the way that it works,
Yeah.
because it's so singularly focused on growth and profit.
Yes.
And and then you can see how a person can join a corporation, and then they're getting promoted and all that, and then it just changes their whole internal culture, gets integrated with the corporation's culture, and then they end up and then their natural psychopathic tendencies get to have some get to move through their job. And so, well, it's the same thing with the politics and finance and all of this stuff. You get these people and they get together, and then they sort of become nodes of this cultural network, and then they take on the qualities. And so they're not even, and then the people who are actually coming up with symbols and stuff, that's not George Bush or Tony Blair or anybody like that. There must be some, I know we would probably say that they were Masons or Knights Templar or something like that. There's probably some, there probably is some kind of Illuminati or whatever with people who are, of intergenerational wealth. And this is how they're occupying their interests and time, and is, with all this kind of esoteric stuff. And so, but the thing is that there's nothing really totally new about the way that we have a shadow government. And every society, every civilization has always had a shadow government. There's always been a psychopathic side to leadership and to government, or to the royalty, or wherever you want it. It's because it's a part of our own psyche. It's in the human psyche. And so it's going to kind of collectivize and kind of move organically through in the way that it does. And so, I mean, it's going to move through your personal shadow. I should be very clear when I say shadow. I'm saying, obviously, I'm saying everything that you don't want to face about yourself, right? That you're shoving back in cognitive dissonance, that everything, it's all of your own repressed emotions, your own rage, your own grief, these kinds of things, your own guilt that you don't want to deal with. It's, all the stuff from your childhood and abuse and stuff like that you can't really remember anymore. So there's the personal shadow, but then there's also the collective shadow that you have your part of. And so this is really your primal side, because everything that we would consider to be dark and shadowy or evil is present in the animal kingdom.
Yes.
And so, especially if you look at primates and you look at baboons and other animals, and you can see the kinds of things that they're doing that we call instinct or nature are abhorrent to our moral sensibilities. And so those traits, those animalistic traits, are inside of us. They're in our DNA, and they're seeking some kind of expression. But if we were to just express those animal instincts, it would destroy society. So we create these moral boundaries, and we say, okay, here's what's acceptable and here's not what's acceptable. And the good side of that is that we get to have nice organized societies and everyone gets along for the most part. There's still wars happening and things. The dark side's still moving, but because of the fact that we have created these moral and ethical boundaries, we now can have, some order and have a human life as we know it. So that's the good side of it. The bad side of it is that we form this barrier, this cognitive dissonance, this barrier where everything that is antisocial gets shoved down into the unconscious. And then it leaks out in all the different organic ways that it leaks out. So it leaks out through you having arguments with your spouse. It leaks out through adultery and sexual promiscuity. It leaks out through abusing other people. If you're the boss at work, or if you're, maybe you're not the boss, but you're stealing from your boss, or all kinds of ways, or you sit around and cheer about the war in Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever it is, or you're involved in the war in Afghanistan or Iraq, at whatever level. So these are all very primal actions. But they come from our animal heritage, and they are in our unconscious, they are in our genetics. And so you have to expect that kind of material, that kind of psychic and interrelational material, is going to find a way to move. And so when we're out here studying the New World Order and all these creepy people and stuff, they're really mostly just unconscious vehicles for this energy that's in all of us. And we're basically empowering them to be our agents so that they can do the things that we don't want to do ourselves. You see what I'm saying?
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. I mean, do you think these people would want to do that kind of inner work though, Colin? I mean, I can't imagine Tony Blair facing his shadows. I mean, seriously.
There are people that show up, though. There are people that show up. They say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I was, deep in the world of finance, and I was, I was knowingly, I think of one guy, a Dutch guy, was knowingly, or I was aware that there was drug money was coming through me and blah, 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 and this kind of stuff. And then I had to get out of it, and I had to hide from these people. And now I'm a very, spiritual person who's working on myself. So that is happening. That does happen. There are those kinds of people who fall out of it. Or it's maybe more common that they don't go in that direction of working on themselves, but they go in the direction of trying to fight the cult or whatever that they were a part of. So there are people that break off from that, but I think it's most people are scared to do that. So if they, there's some, if they're in a family, if they're in an ancient banking family or whatever, and they find out, what the family's been doing, and they just don't want to have anything to do with it, they'll just become a farmer or something like that, and they'll just kind of stay away from it, but they're not going to talk about it. But people do break away from that and go on another path. But the people that are still in those kinds of organizations that we know about, they're the ones who are either too afraid to break away or just too identified with their job and their position, and too much peer pressure. I mean, peer pressure is huge, obviously. Yeah. So, they're just kind of stuck in there, but it's kind of all of our problem, because you have these people who are sort of slaves to the shadow of mankind. And then there's all of us, and we are ignorant to the shadow of mankind. And so we're saying, you should stop being a slave to evil. But then, I'm saying, but you should become aware of your own contribution to the world's evil. And so, it's really, we can't expect this kind of phenomenon to stop, the whole satanic New World Order type thing or whatever we're talking about here, if we ourselves are walking around totally ignorant of our own shadows, our own portion of the world's evil that lives within us, and we don't have any awareness of it, we're not doing anything about it, and we're not taking responsibility for it, but we're asking them to take responsibility for it. So you see, that's not really going to work.
Yeah, and this is why what you're doing is so important, and if enough people can, start that inner work, and start spreading that, it's like a snowball effect, isn't it? You'd hope that more people do it, and the world just gets a bit calmer, really, because people can integrate and see and have that awareness of self. It's having that awareness of what, there's darkness in every one of us. I've done some stuff in the past. Clearly, I'm not happy about.
Sure.
I've generally been a good guy. I generally am
Right.
a good guy,
Right.
but there have been moments where, I'd rather keep it to myself, and I'll deal with that myself. But it's in all of us. It's all
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah. Because it's a challenge to try to force your human body and mind into the mold that is designed to make a healthy, balanced society, and but against your lower nature. That's
Mhm.
and that's in all the religious scripture and everything. So, however you want to explain it, there's always that lower nature, or you could say the devil, is always there and always tempting you. And that's part of the challenge of being a human being. And it's one of the it's the downside to being conscious. It's the downside. It's kind of like in the story of Genesis itself kind of tells you this story of how that, once Adam and Eve became conscious, they were in the garden, they were in bliss, not being conscious of their own nature. But once they became conscious, now the whole world of duality opened up, and all the problems of good and evil and morality and self-consciousness and all of this came in.
Yeah.
And then the whole world of sin and everything goes from there. And so it's kind of like it's just a continual, this is just part of the simulation that we're in. For whatever reason, we're in this duality simulation.
Mm.
And this is this good and evil dichotomy, is just part of the, good, evil, light, dark, inside, outside, positive, negative, masculine, feminine. This is the dimension we're in. And so we have to kind of just realize that this is part of the ride. The evil is, and the personal correlate, the shadow, is part of the game. And so we're each person, by becoming more aware, then we change the way we play the game, or that the way the game plays out
Mm.
to some degree. And it's apparently, it seems like the universe or God or the simulation is learning from all of this. And so it's like, if you have the impulse to clean yourself, to become a more transparent person, to become a more healthy, internally healthy person, then the universe is basically saying, I need you to do this evolution. I need you to do that. And so that's why you're getting that impulse to do that, because evolution demands that some people do different things, because there's, we're on a long-term trajectory here, and we're being called to do these things. So this is where, it just comes back to, just do your path, follow your bliss. And if you can try to get as clear about what that is, then that's just it's all going to work out. That's the way it's supposed to be. And you have to accept a certain amount of evil in the world. That's just part of nature. It's just part of this reality.
Well, it is. It's brutal, isn't it? The world is brutal, and
It's all things. It's all things. And
oh yeah,
brutality is one of those things. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
It's beautiful. I mean, I try, because I've got people who only see the brutal. The red
Right.
pill, the red.
That's a lens. Yes.
Yeah. But I try and because people say, well, how come you're happy? Well, because I try and look at the beauty of this world, And there's an awful lot of that, and a lot of that you're saying is the simplicity of it. There's a real simplicity of just walking down the street with my dog at 5 a.m. and listening to the birds sing in the morning as dawn's breaking. And there's so much wonder and beauty if I can find my inner child at that point, and that child is going, wow, then I've got love in my heart, and that's the feeling I want, because that's where I come alive.
Exactly.
And there's so much of that. There's so much of that. The red pill stuff is very important, because I want to be aware. I want to be aware of what they're up to. I've got a duty to protect my family. When 2020 hit, it was like, okay, I've got to look after my kids again. I've got to sort this out. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to treat people like cattle and make people wear a mask from table to toilet, and all that kind of crap.
But the hypocrisy in it too, like, take off your mask when you're taking a bite of your food and then put it back on. That kind of stuff.
And it was
like, it's so obvious that it was social control and that it was fake.
Yeah. And then it was so sad, speaking of that period of time, when your friends turn on you because you're not on that level, that frequency, that vibration, or whatever. You see the perception is different. So, and it's interesting as well, we talk about being conscious. I remember so blatantly before that 11/11 moment being unconscious. Totally. I can step into that reality, and I can see it. And don't get me wrong, most of that time I had a great time, and I was up to all sorts of no good as well, Colin. But I had a great time,
Right. Yeah.
Be it drugs, be it promiscuous sex, be it whatever. I went through that period of my life.
Yeah, that's sort of normal for modern people to do those things in your 20s and 30s, probably.
Exactly. And now you're kind of more aware of self. Like I say, it's kind of, I would never step into that again. Not that I have many regrets of what happened in that period of my life either, but I've got more control of myself.
Yeah. When I was in the pre-red pilled age, I was like you. I was preoccupied with the world and what I was doing in the world, and that's natural. And you're supposed to do that in your 20s. It's ego development time. But I was always curious, and I remember, going to bookstores and looking at magazines, and there was, you could always find some bookstores that would have a very wide variety of magazines, and you could find spiritual magazines or magazines about philosophy and stuff like that, or books. And but magazines was kind of I use that as an example because it's kind of showing you what's in the mainstream culture. And so I would go look, and I would be like, okay, so here we go. Here's this subject. Here's this subject. Here's this point of view. Here's this point of view. But I never was fulfilled by any of it. It was always like, it just all seemed so kind of shallow. And, I'd look around at the other people, around me, and, they're just, taking it in too. And it all just seemed like, so, what is this? I mean, where, I was just kind of, I was always kind of like, I can't really believe that, is this all we got? And, whatever it was, is this all we got or whatever? And then when I started to get into politics, I was like, okay, where am I politically? I was like, late 20s, something. I'm like, where am I politically? And what is this? And how do I even get into this? And, I was listening to my dad probably tell me his political beliefs. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm kind of inclined naturally to kind of just take what he has and kind of start with that. But I just started questioning, and I'm like, where am I? What are the political parties and what do they believe? And I start looking it up, and I'm like, maybe I'm a libertarian. I kind of remember thinking, okay, I think I might be kind of a libertarian. I think that's kind of where I am or whatever. But the whole thing, and then I started listening to political talk radio, and it's the same kind of a feeling that this is all surface level. There must be something deeper than this. I just didn't know about it. I just didn't know how to go about it. But then when the 9/11 thing happened and that hit me, then I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. There's this entire, unconscious realm of human culture that's gigantic, and that
Yeah.
the average person is just feeding on this top level of cream at the very top, and that most of what's really going on with the human condition is down below that area, but we just didn't have access to it. And I'm like, wow, everybody is just, how, this is just insane. And I just had to go through this whole period of trying to reckon with this new reality, and how people could be walking around sort of not knowing that there was these deeper layers were there.
Wow, it's mad, isn't it? I remember I was brought up very left wing, if you like, growing up, working
Yeah.
class background.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Labour Party in the UK.
Yeah.
That my grandparents were members, so it was always battling against the Conservatives and Margaret Thatcher in
Yeah.
the 80s and all
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of thing.
Yep.
And then even recently, even after my starting of awakening, I was still quite politically charged. I
Yeah.
always, in my hero's journey, if you like, don't like to see the small man stamped all over.
Sure.
I still don't. I think
Yeah.
it's absolutely awful. Shouldn't be
Right.
happening. And
Right.
the world should be more fair. But
Right.
the world isn't like that, unfortunately. But then I think it was Jeremy Corbyn. There's a guy, an MP called Jeremy
Yeah.
Corbyn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
only a few years ago. So this was about 2018, I think, or something like that. He became quite popular in the UK for the left-leaning, the liberal
Yeah.
type. And
Right.
I was on that road. It was like, we've got a
Mhm.
chance of change.
Right.
2020 hits after the country itself would never allow Jeremy Corbyn in any way, and he was kind of
Right.
ridiculed as a communist and whatever.
Right.
2020 hits and Jeremy Corbyn's disappeared. So when it comes to people actually's freedoms in danger, I'm thinking, where are you, Jeremy? Where are you?
Right.
When
He was kind of
people
like a British version of Bernie Sanders in America.
exactly the same. They
Yes.
came around the same time, didn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Interesting, isn't it? How it mirrors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of I kind of been on both sides of it. My parents were hippies, and my mother worked for the ACLU, a big liberal nonprofit for many years, and my dad was probably always kind of more libertarian, but I kind of tended to fall towards the left too. And I got involved in Occupy Wall Street, the San Francisco chapter of it. And so I kind of was, a little left of center, also, but yeah, but then once I was red pilled, it took a little while, but then I gave all that up. It doesn't,
It's a show, isn't it?
it's just, yeah, the mainstream. It's one thing to be more oriented towards the left, and I think I agree with Jordan Peterson on this, and that it's that your political orientation is coming from your personality type, and so people who are higher in openness tend to be more on the liberal side, and people who are higher in conscientiousness tend to be on the conservative side. So, there's a spectrum and all of that, but there's a difference between having a liberal or conservative orientation and a corrupt, fake Wizard of Oz version of that's given to you, that you then take on, and you go, yeah, since I'm oriented naturally to be liberal, these are the people that I need to support, and these are the causes that I support. So they basically give you your persona, they give you your talking points, they give you your beliefs based on what your natural orientation is. And so everybody walks around with these fake, unexamined beliefs that kind of match their natural orientation. But then if you ever analyze it, you realize, hey, wait a minute, this guy's calling himself a liberal, but I mean, what is this? It's not real. It's fake.
Yeah. It's fascinating though. It's like, so during that period of time, I being a pub landlord and everything else, and I'm opening the doors and being the super spreader that I am, wiping out granny, as they say. I remember being ostracized on social media and being called a right-wing gammon, which is kind of it's a proper slang attack at the very, very far right, if you like, in the UK, being told. Right. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting that I've been called that when I've been a tree hugger all my life. And it's so weird how that worked. And all my left-leaning friends just turned against me, some vicious attacks, during that period. Interesting. I mean, I'm at the point where I've been able to step back and kind of just appreciate where they are in their journey now. But at the time, it was very painful. Looking at it, it really hurt. When in my perception, and I'm still standing by it as well, I was there to help them. I was trying to get them to see.
Right. Trying to wake them up, red pill them.
We're trying to red pill them, which you can't do. They've got to do it themselves, haven't you? It's not easy to do.
Yeah, I do remember talking to people about 9/11 and stuff when I was in that mode of kind of being a culture warrior. And there were a percentage of people who were like, wow, okay. Yeah, I can kind of see how that works. I don't know if they really, went that much further down the rabbit hole themselves. A couple did. Melissa, she was kind of red pilled. They say you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth. She was born with a red pill in her mouth. So she was always looking for what's going on behind the surface. She always had that orientation. And once I told her about 9/11, she's like, oh yeah, that figures, because she actually watched it on TV and stuff. And she said, I know this looks fake. She just thought this looks fake. This can't be the whole story. She was involved in other things in music. And so she didn't really pursue it. But once I started telling her, she was like, yeah, that makes sense. So, there were others, there were people that were influenced by my input, but yeah, you kind of have to, if it wasn't for people making films, for making websites and books and stuff and putting that kind of stuff out, then we do rely on other people to share that information with us.
We do.
So it's a good thing to do that. And, but what you can't do is you can't force it on anybody, or, you can't make them change their mind.
That was the difficult thing in 2020, because it was almost like, okay, we're under attack here. That's how it felt like to me. My family's under attack. My daughter, my sons, they're under. They've basically come for my kids. So I'm like going,
right. It was worse than 9/11 because they were actually coming for you. They weren't just saying, hey, let us send some soldiers to war.
Yeah. That's how it felt
who are volunteers.
Yeah.
We're coming to your house. We're shutting down your business.
Yeah, we're shutting down your business. And not only that,
we're forcing some meds into your arm that you don't want to take.
Exactly.
This is worse. Yeah.
This is, And so that's where I'm thinking, I've got to help my friends and my family here. That's where I was at. I've got to, just because my perception's different, it was like, look at this, look at this, look at this. And they were, Ant, you're mad. Why would they do that? Why would they do that?
And the answer to that is so deep, and it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier about how we all are part of this shadow play, and we're all participating in it. And there's the sort of conscious psychopathic actors, and then there's the people that go along to get along, the banality of evil, so to speak. And it's like when someone says, well, why would they do this? How could they pull this off? How could you have a conspiracy like that and all of that? It's like, you can't give them a completely satisfactory answer without really going into the psychological and really going into all that. And now you're taking them into a realm they have really no familiarity with.
It's
And so
dark.
and you're like, I would like to answer that for you, but I don't think I can. It's like you're really stuck. It's not a good situation.
Oh, I always say, because I remember when with loose change, I remember going to my parents' house and saying to my mum, obviously, this isn't right. And my mum said the same thing. Anthony, why would they do that to us? And I'm thinking, but mum, they're not the same as me and you. They don't
Right.
think like we do. They
Right.
don't feel like we do.
Right.
These people are different.
Yeah.
If the people at all, sometimes, it's just you can go down the Ike route. It could be anything going on, but they are not the same as me and you.
Have you ever heard of the I think it's called the Stanford Prison Experiment? It was a sociological experiment where they trying to remember the details of it, but they put people into a situation where I think they put volunteers in as prison guards. They replaced prison guards. I may be a little incorrect on this, but they replaced prison guards with these volunteers, and they may have replaced prisoners also. I can't remember, but they put volunteers into these roles, and then to see if the situation itself would change the psyches of the individuals, or if the individuals would retain their prior state of empathy and sense of fairness and justice in these positions. And they found that the position itself changes people.
Interesting.
There's the one, there's a number of these studies. There's the one where someone is they have volunteers do an experiment where they are told that there's someone in another room behind a glass window, and that they're told to turn up a dial and shock them, torture them or whatever. And they at a certain, and the person who's the commander telling them to do it is in a white lab coat, and they realize that they're in an experiment and that everyone is a volunteer, including the person who's being shocked. But at some point, a certain percentage, like 30% of the people, said, no, I'm not going to go any further. I'm not going to torture this person. I don't care what scenario we're in or whatever. I'm done. And they get up and walk away. And then the other 70% or something just continue to turn up the electricity until the other person is dead. They're an actor. They're not actually not dying. They're acting it out. So, it shows you that and this is kind of like where the term "the banality of evil" came from Hannah Arendt, who was a reporter for New Yorker magazine, I think it was at the time, who was reporting on the trials of the Nazis after World War II. They had those Nuremberg trials, and she was there reporting on it. And it's very famous that she talked about the one guy, Adolf Eichmann, who was supposedly the mastermind of the Holocaust or whatever. He figured out how you could kind of run the technical aspects of doing those kind of prison camps and stuff, and stamping people with codes and all that kind of stuff. And she said that, this guy wasn't really, he just didn't have the psychological capacity to push back, because he was in that position. He was thought of himself as a patriot, and working for the right side, and all of his peers around him were pressuring him into this role. And he was just in that role, and he was kind of just a weak man who just went along with things and donated his personal intelligence into the regime. And he wasn't a monster, he was just a human being. And so a lot of people got mad at her about that, because they wanted to, sort of demonize all these bureaucrats and all the Nazis who are responsible for all that stuff. They wanted to make them monsters, and some of them were, genetic psychopaths, and so you could call them monsters. But a lot of it was a collective movement where the dark side, the shadow side of the German people was getting channeled through the regime, and people were just going along with it. And so, it's that we saw this again with the COVID thing, and that guy Matthias Desmet, he came out with his whole book and came up with the term mass formation that became mass formation psychosis and all of that. And he was going back over this kind of evidence and talking about this kind of a thing. So, this is a collective phenomenon. This is a collective human phenomenon. And it's like the human psyche just kind of recycles these same kinds of things. And there was some, I mean, I don't know how many people you could say that the World War II cycle and the World War I cycle, and these other prior cycles or other genocidal cycles, the one in China and stuff, these seemed to be more deadly and more brutal than the COVID cycle. The COVID cycle was nasty too, and a lot of people probably died from those shots. And and some people say up to 20 million people, and maybe many others have been maimed by it. So there was a lot of people, but it was a milder cycle than some of these prior cycles. And so I think actually, humanity, or the West at least, might be a little bit more awake, and so all the red pilling and everything had been working, and it helped mitigate the destructiveness of this COVID cycle.
You know what, Colin? I was just going to say exactly that, as you were saying. I think they didn't get as far as they wanted to go with it.
They didn't. No. Look at us. Here we are.
I know. Yeah.
We're not wearing masks. We're unvaxxed, and we're free to go.
I know. But when you think about how the mastermind behind that, though, knowing that they touch on people's emotions, because most people in this world are generally good people, aren't they? They are, most people, and they touch on their emotions. Okay, so you potentially are going to hurt Granny, as they were saying in the UK. I'm not sure how it was done in the US, but you've got to. Yeah, and keep your distance, and they use the 3 slogans, the repeated 3 things, and it would be, the way the colors were on the billboards as well, and it was constant. So many deaths, so many deaths, so many deaths. People were terrified, and they masterminded populations all around the world to fall in line.
They did.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, there was some group that had brainstormed out the whole thing, and we saw some of the Event 201, pre-planning or Crimson Contagion, and these other exercises that they'd done. So there was a group, there was a cabal or a group, kind of like the same or different one or a related one that did 9/11. But there was a group that had sort of planned this out and had gathered together all of the pieces that they needed, and then they kind of they drilled it out to see if it would work, and then they ran it, and it was like a program, and they ran it, and they just and then we saw what we got out of it. So there was an absolutely conscious contingent of people that knew exactly what they were doing, and ran that operation on us. So those are the it's like it's stratified into different types of people who play different types of roles.
Yeah, it when it took me to my shadow, obviously, but it also took me to my subconscious as well. You knowing
Yeah.
how we just basically are on programs. So it was kind of when I started doing the work on myself, it was like, okay, how many masks have I worn? You know, I was like a chameleon, you know, going into different situations in my life, be it with the guys that I would hang out with from school for many years and going getting drunk and taking drugs and whatever for you know, to then going into a job situation like you were saying and just doing your job, and it's a different mask you wear, but
Yeah.
all subconsciously just
Right.
programmed that 9 to 5, get home, boom. And I was trying to then I started trying to figure out my habits as well and why I do things, you know. So for example, you know, silly thing like brushing my hair, and then I'd ask myself, why am I brushing my hair? Well, because I want to
Right.
look good. Well, why do I want to
Right.
look good? Because I want people to find me attractive. And as I was going down, I was asking me these questions, and
Right.
you know, what came to me, Colin, was I didn't love myself.
Yeah.
And that's what it came down to. I
Yeah.
had no self-love, and that's
Yeah.
where my new journey then started. You know, it was right, okay, that's why I had to hit my shadows. That's why I had
Yeah.
to start finding love and forgiveness for the majority of things, you know, and
Yes.
important journey, and I want to help people with that. That's why I've set up my, you know, I became a counselor during the time of the pub. I trained to be a counselor, and then I became a Reiki master, and I recently
Oh.
started doing hypnosis as well.
Oh, good for
So-
you. Great. Fantastic.
yes. So, and we've got this little boat on a canal nearby, and I'm
Uh-huh.
going to use that as a healing space. You know, so
Oh,
that
fantastic. That sounds
yeah,
cool.
nice and tranquil, beautiful little space. And I just like again, part of my hero's journey, just want to help people, you know. So I've got
Yeah.
the tools and the experience and the wisdom. See, that's the thing, isn't it? It's the wisdom. We if we can get away from the ignorance and dive into the wisdom instead, the world will change hugely.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm falling off the kind of change the world type of a deal a little bit.
I get that. Change yourself first, like, but
Yeah. I mean, I think actually, you know, when Melissa and I started all this shadow work stuff, and we put out the book Shadow Tech in 2015,
hmm,
we were getting a little bit grandiose about it, and because we were really really channeling. I mean, I always was skeptical of books and, you know, that were channeled and all that kind of stuff. Except I always liked the Jane Roberts books, the Seth books, but you know, but I got to see what it really is like when you actually are channeling information, channeling some kind of gnosis.
yeah,
And we were really channeling, and we were like, wow, this is really amazing what we're getting here. And we thought we were going to make a movie about what we were doing.
okay,
And now it turns out I'm making the movie about it, but it's about it after Melissa's already passed. So it was like
yeah,
um, but but we were, you know, we were in that, wow, if more people could learn about this. And I was doing my absolute best to try to demystify the Jungian idea of the shadow and try to bring it into the 21st century and try to meld it with other understandings that were out there and try to create like a synthesis, a holistic understanding of the shadow, both internally and externally. And so that came out as that book. And you know, we did some workshops, and we did some interviews and all of that. And there were, you know, it got good reviews and stuff, and it was it there was a small group of people who were ready to accept it. It was the red pill people who were on a self-healing path. Um, those alchemists that I was talking about. Those are the
yeah,
ones that were into it. And so, you know, we got enough positive feedback from it to know that, you know, we're on it here. But we also found how difficult it was for most people to go down that rabbit hole.
mm,
And so, you know, and then as time went on and we continued with the work, I even put out another book, about a year ago now. And I've kind of had a come down from all this kind of change the world thing. It's like, wow, I found this whole important domain that, we've been neglecting. And if we could only understand this, we could all evolve ourselves. And, but that is something that I think happens on a much longer timeline. And it's like, if you go back to the Indian understanding of the yuga cycles, where you have you have these Plato's ages, with the Dark Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Silver Age, the Golden Age. Well, the Hindus have their own understanding of this sort of cyclical nature of history, and where people kind of, they have it's kind of like, it's just the life cycle, really. But there's like a winter period of human consciousness, a dark age. And then you kind of climb out of that. And then eventually you get to a golden age where where the average person is as mature as they possibly can be. And then you kind of fall down from that, and just history kind of turns on this, and you kind of spiral through this over very long periods. And so what we're doing actually is we're contributing to a much longer cycle than we tend to frame everything in terms of one lifetime. It's like, well, as far back as I can remember, or I started here, I have an 80-year life cycle, and I really want to see the world change in my 80 years, and then I'll feel satisfied. Right? If I'm going to be really unhappy if by the time I die I haven't seen much change, and
I'll get used to it.
so I, and it's just natural because we have that small lifespan. But so what we have to do is we have to contribute to the evolution of mankind in the highest fidelity way that we can, and the most genuine way, and the least, in the most productive and clean way that we can. And then we have to just let go and let it take its course and do what it's going to do. And we do have to stay on it. And we don't just give up because I tried humanity, and just don't become misanthropic about it and just reject all of humanity because they're a bunch of sheeple. That's a tendency to do that. But, you just have to stay with it and keep doing the work and keep sharing your work. And then just know that you're contributing to the evolution of mankind over a much longer period of time than just a single lifetime.
I'm with you on that, and that's very inspiring. It's like, for me, I came into this world perfect. I'd like to go back as least tarnished as possible when I do go back.
Yeah.
And it's about doing the work to go back as less tarnished as possible. It's not going to be. I'm not going to go back perfect.
No,
but I'll go back decent, and that's the thing, and I know I will do because that's the work.
Melissa, I think, is a good example for this, because she really was dedicated to self-healing from her adolescence. I mean, she was reading Yogananda and other spiritual material at an early age. All the lyrics of all her songs that she created, so many over her life, were, they were almost, it's like they were either about, how society is screwed up, kind of a red pill version of a red pill look at society, or how she was screwed up and how she was working on healing herself. That's pretty much all it was. And she went through one stage of awakening and self-healing and self-knowledge and challenging herself after another. And then when we got together, we really, really took it seriously. And I can say that she did the absolute best that she could to clean herself as much as she possibly could in one lifetime. And I could tell you there was this dream that she had where, because we were trying to figure out this cancer thing. What is this? Is this really going to kill you? Or is this just another one of your big dark night of the soul cycles.
Mhm.
And she had almost no negative dreams about her cancer. And so we were just like, okay, we thought she was going to beat it. But in one dream, Death himself, like with a sickle and a hood and everything, he came to her in a dream.
Wow.
And he said, Melissa, it's all about realization.
Wow.
And so she was like, okay, we talked about it. We're like, well, what does this mean? Well, for her, one of her, spiritual gurus or whatever was Yogananda, and his whole system is called self-realization. And so we thought, oh well, maybe she's, it's referring to, that kind of, path of enlightenment, and that is really what it was saying. But it was also saying the fact that death was talking to her, and she was facing death. It was like death was saying, your life and what's going on here is not about you accomplishing really anything. It's not about you really changing yourself. It's about you becoming self-aware. How self-aware of all the different layers of your psyche can you become in one lifetime?
Okay, yeah.
Because if you think about the soul's path over multiple lifetimes, it's each opportunity is an opportunity to become more self-aware of what the nature of humanity, or what the nature of my humanity is. And then that will be carried on to the next lifetime if you believe in that kind of a thing. But so death was saying, your job is to become as self-aware as possible in this lifetime. That's it. It doesn't mean you get to live longer. It doesn't mean you get to acquire anything. It doesn't mean you get to be some, rock star or whatever. It means you just need to become as self-aware as possible in this lifetime, and that's your job. And so I can say she did her job. The absolute, you couldn't do a better job than what she did. So,
Bless her.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the cycles as well. I'm just interested, the Kali Yuga that we're in, or whatever it is, and we're kind of, because the world does seem a bit more bonkers than normal. Do you remember? You will remember Dallas in the 80s, won't you? The TV series. Yeah. And you remember when Bobby Ewing died, and he died.
Larry Hagman. Yeah. Right. Bobby Ewing. You're right.
So there was an episode, right, where when he came back into the show and he was just in the shower, and in that episode, everything went fucking crazy in that episode, like dead quick, like car accidents and all sorts of wacky shit was going on, and it was all in one episode. And then Pamela Ewing wakes up and Bobby Ewing's in the show, and it's like it was all a dream. The past year was a dream, but everything sped up and it was all mental. And this is what it feels like to me at the moment. Everything is going crazy. And when you were saying before about the fact that they haven't injected nearly anywhere near what they probably wanted to do, or got away with what they wanted to do, and people are waking up, they are doing. I'm wondering if they're trying to in a way speed this up because they want the transhumanism thing. They want people to be they want people to have the technology in their bodies to almost have that control and stop this awakening that's going, the golden age, like you say. If we're going to be eventually, humanity's heading that way. It's almost like they know the dark sides. It's a theory that's been in my head for a while, but I can see it.
Yeah, it's okay, so they are, if you take that point of view, I understand that point of view, and if you go down that, they're in a very difficult situation right now, because they've kind of been uncloaked And so there's a lot of people that can see them now. And so there's a lot of resistance. And if only 1% of the population could see them, maybe they could keep going the way they want to. But when, say, 10 or 20% of the population can see them,
it's big,
it's
isn't it?
it's big. And so no matter which way they go, they're kind of checkmated right now. And what they can do is they can still cause a lot of damage, and they can still take advantage of a lot of people who are still asleep.
Yeah,
And
sure.
they can make life difficult for all of us. But
But
I don't think whatever fantasy they had for the world, I don't think that's going to be happening.
I don't either.
Anymore.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's going to happen. I do
No.
think they're going to, the Pied Pipers will be out there. Even the red pill initiates are going to be jumping and following. We'll just see how it goes. Again, it's down to people perceptions. My perceptions of Musk, Trump, and all these guys is I'm quite clear on the fact that I don't trust any of them. But there's a lot of my friends, good close friends from these past few years, who are followers of that. And I hope I'm wrong. I always said, I hope I'm wrong. But I don't see anyone coming to save us. I think we've got to do the work ourselves. We've got to save ourselves, and spread that seed, and educate our kids as well. There's a reality that we lived through, Colin, in the 80s and the 90s that our children won't see. Before the mobile phone, before the internet, it's a totally different world now, and like it or not, AI is getting, they're obviously 20, 30 years probably more advanced than we know anyway. What we see on with Chat GPT is probably minuscule in comparison to what actually really is out there.
Perhaps.
But at the end of the day, our children, my kids, they were born with a phone in the hand in a way, really, and that's the world that they know. And I'm hoping that the human spirit, and I believe in the human spirit, so I don't think they're going to get away with it. But creativity is so key. It's all heart for me.
Oh yeah.
AI is never going to have heart, is it? You know what I mean? You're not going to. You being in a band, Colin, and I've been in bands myself. That comes from you. That comes from inside you. It doesn't.
Right.
It can't be done by a computer. It just cannot.
Yeah, either the whole fragile matrix system is just going to start breaking down, and then that's going to return a large amount of people back to a more natural state of living. And or there's going to be some real movements to which has already begun. I mean, you sort of see this homesteading movement, and there's all kinds of different sub movements of people who are saying, okay, this is not going to work anymore. We can't just be, have a matrix rat race type of life. This is just not working for our souls. And they're looking for options. And kind of like how there was the back to the land movement of the American hippies and stuff after the 60s and all of that. So I think there's people are going to, we have those of us who are aware of how toxic the society has become and parasitic it's become. We have to actually really put out the effort and get together and collaborate and put out the effort to actually reform our own lifestyles and into something that's more natural, and where we can still use technology and all of that, but where we're not being dumbed down by it.
Yeah.
And so that's going to have to come from, it's either we're going to be forced to do it because the system just breaks down, which may happen, or it may happen incrementally over a long period, or we have to say, I'm not going to live this way. And there's just we could have another whole conversation about all the different ways in which you can kind of, get off grid, or at least even not get off grid totally, but just, make your footprint much more conducive to real human living.
Yeah.
Just right where you are. And there has to be a movement of, right now, I think people, the whole red pill movement is taking off because there's a lot of people who are they were awakened by the COVID thing. And now they're seeing how the politics and everything is fake and all of that. And they're incensed. They're angry over the whole thing. So they're getting on X or whatever platform and they're typing, keyboard warriors about, all the red pill stuff, and they're angry and all that, but they're not at the stage yet where they're ready to do anything about it. Actually, okay, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna work less. Me and my wife, we're gonna, start our own, gardens. We're gonna raise chickens. If we have to move out of this location, we're gonna do that. We're gonna limit our online time. Our whole diet is changing. We're gonna have goats and, and make our own dairy products and stuff like that. You either do that, or what I was going to say is most people are not ready to do that yet. They're still in the mode of being angry that they were hoodwinked.
Yes.
And wanting to take it out on the politicians or take it out on Bill Gates or whatever, and saying, basically saying, I want my innocence back. I want my naivety back. And and I'm angry and I need you to change things. I need you to step out of the way and someone new to show up who's honest to take care of me. I need a new mommy and daddy. You've been a bad mommy and daddy to me. You've been bad parents. You were cheating on and doing all this bad stuff. And now I found you out, and I need a better set of parents to take care of me. And that's where a lot of people are still at right now.
Absolutely.
And so, and then it has to go towards, okay, that's not going to happen. You have to go through that phase, go through the grief of all that. You have to take on a certain amount of self-responsibility. And then where I'm at, which is even a step beyond that level, is, okay, you can't expect if you're going to start a new community over here or be part of a new movement to get away from the matrix or whatever, you're just going to recreate all the same toxic stuff that people are creating in the old system, unless you really understand yourself and your nature and you start cleaning yourself out from the inside.
That's a big boom. That's definite.
And
100%.
that's another hurdle that you have to get through, because it's already enough to kind of say, okay, I'm going to set down my career and my old friends and all that, and I'm going to live a different kind of a lifestyle, an alternative lifestyle. But then I'm also going to cut out a lot of this, distraction stuff that I've been doing and really focus on myself. And I'm going to bring my partner, my family members into this, and we're going to turn our family into kind of an alchemical vessel, and we're going to evolve ourselves through our relationships. That's a whole other state of consciousness. And that's kind of what it really takes to kind of get out of this old system. It takes this very holistic inner outer kind of transformation. That's very serious. And I'm not seeing that there's very many people who are ready to do both of those things. But it takes time. It's not just our lifetime here. So we just kind of go in the direction that we're going and figure out what works for us, and then share that with other people. And then other people can get ideas from us if they want to. And we just let nature run its course.
Yeah. And I've got faith in that. I've got total faith in that. I do believe in the human spirit completely.
Yeah.
It
will work out. Of course it'll work out. Will work out the way it's supposed to, because the human genome is not just, 2 million years old. The human genome is billions of years old. All of life is inside of us.
Yeah, exactly.
So life wins.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's just the way I see it as well, though, Colin. It's just a big bloody show. It's a big pantomime, and we've just got to play our part.
But
And
this
I
also
just play
takes you into the nature of consciousness itself, and like the Hindu idea of Maya and all of that, or
exactly.
that consciousness itself, human consciousness itself, tends to present the world to all of us as a play, as a show, as a movie,
Mm, mm,
and
mm.
that perception itself is not real, and that
I know.
perception itself is a filtered um, curated kind of simulation
Yeah,
that is a facsimile of what really exists, or we don't, or not even a facsimile, but a representation of what really exists. We don't even really know what the actual world is. We just know what our sensory perception is, and then all human beings share similar genetics, so we're all kind of in the same movie of
that's right.
perception, but
Yeah,
we don't
that's right.
even know what it is. So the whole reality itself to human beings is kind of naturally fake. It's a simulation.
Yeah, it is. I agree, and it's very limited, isn't it? That's the thing. Our perceptions, because of our sensories, that we only see so much. We only hear so
It
much. We only
kind of
smell
has to be
so much.
limited. It's mainly built for survival, right?
Mm,
Most of our sensory apparatus is kind of like what animals have, and it's basically built for your environment. The colors that you see, the colors that you don't see, the things that you hear, the things that you don't hear, the things that hurt when you touch them or don't hurt. This is all kind of based on how your body is built and how your senses work, and it's there for you to operate in a certain environment. It's not there for you to understand the totality of reality, right?
no.
Our consciousness is a filtered system where 99% of reality is filtered out, and then we're left with that which serves us
Yeah.
evolutionarily. And so then what we're asking to do is to open that up, even a little bit. And that is part of the process of evolving personally and collectively, but we'll never really know what the totality of reality actually is.
Isn't it amazing, though? See,
It's
I find all
it's
that and just wonderful and amazing. Just blows my like, but it opens my
yeah.
heart that as well because I'm like, wow, it's just what are we in? It's back to that again now. It's what we said at the beginning. What are we in? You
That's why I
know?
call it a movie, living in the movie. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah. And
all
we
it's
are
all a
we are
movie.
actors. And when you look at your
We are.
life, and I've looked at mine, I've acted so many times. It's always a new act.
Right. Yeah,
Different
you're
masks.
talking you're talking there about, well, there's different layers of this truth. It's like fractal layers of that truth, because then there's the layer of, okay, I'm being an actor. I'm moving into a role. I'm hanging out with these people. And so I'm going to act in the way that they expect me to, and I'm going to wear the
Mhm.
clothing that they are comfortable with and all of that. That's like a persona thing. Like Jung
That's
talked
right.
about
Yeah.
the persona. And so you have that layer of acting in your social role. And it's like I'm at work and I'm this kind of an actor, and then when I'm at home I'm this kind of an actor. When I'm over here on vacation I'm this kind of and there's that kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
then there's just the level of just being a human being itself at any level of perception without any social, even if you just completely took away all your social persona, you're still an actor. You're
Yeah.
still just who's controlling this whole thing? I'm definitely not in control of my own body. I mean, I don't even know what's going on inside my stomach or my lungs or anything. I have no control over what's going on in my own body. And
Incredible that.
so and I have some control over what's going on in my mental state, in my mind, but not a lot. And I don't
It's
have very much control over my emotions.
no.
So I'm just reading somehow there's a script is being fed to me, and
Yeah,
I'm just
man.
acting out the script.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's
And
wild, isn't it?
everyone's doing this.
I know. Wow.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
So it's like, this is where I think I mentioned follow your bliss, Joseph Campbell's term. And it's
Yeah,
kind of like, that's kind of the mandate here. Just kind of tune in to what your soul really wants to do. And it
yeah,
can change from this period of life to this period of life to this period of life. You have different kinds of scenes in your movie that you have to play out. And just tune into that, and then try to just, play that role the absolute best you can, knowing that you're playing a role, knowing that this is the stage I'm in right now. Try to get as much fulfillment out of it as possible. Try to do it as cleanly as possible. Try to
yeah.
do it as self-aware as possible, and correct your mistakes, and try to open your heart as much as you possibly can. And then just try to tune in to the present state of reality as much as you can, and try not to get overwhelmed with just distracting, addictive stuff that's just a stupid distraction. And then just try to enjoy the ride, and then just let God or the universe work out the rest.
Colin, that's a beautiful way of ending the podcast. I wouldn't want to take that away from. It's just perfect way to end it.
Okay, yeah.
Before you go, so can you just let everyone know where they can find you? And obviously you offer courses, you've got your books, and you do counseling as well, don't you? I think you do.
Yep. Yes, I do. So shadowtechalchemy.com is the main website. My counseling is also at colinedavis.com, but it's also linked through shadowtechalchemy.com.
Okay.
So that's there. The last book that I wrote, Transforming Darkness, that's actually, I give that out for free on the website. Shadow Tech is on Amazon. And there's links on the website. So yeah, that's where people can get in touch with me.
You're a superstar, Colin. And
you are too, brother. We all are, right?
We all are, yeah. Do keep in touch though, and I'm sure we can do this again, because there'll be plenty to talk about in no time at all, I'm sure.
You know what I would like to do before I go is I would like to. I was kind of thinking about what's next for me, and one of the things that Melissa and I have been talking about is this community of people who are sort of where we're at. We're red-pilled and we're spiritual. We're doing inner work. We're doing shadow work. We're very serious about all of this. This is a small community, but there's still a lot of people out there. And, we connect through the internet, through, Facebook or other social media, or through podcasts and stuff like that. But I would like to start having at least one and maybe two, actual get-togethers, physical conferences where all of us who are on the same page actually get together. Maybe one in America and maybe one in Europe or England, And so and try to bring all of us who are kind of in this community at least an opportunity to actually physically meet each other. Because that's the way it always was done. People always did do conferences like that, and that's how people, this whole internet thing is very helpful, that we can meet people from all over the world. But then just living your whole life having to interface with this community through a keyboard and a screen is very unsatisfying. So
great.
So that is something that I'm looking to start to do, and maybe you can help me do that.
I'd love to, Colin. I think let's talk, and let's organize something, because there are plenty of people out there. We just got to get the reach, and I'm sure we can do that. And yeah, I'm well up for that, Colin, because it's much needed. So great idea, brother. Great
Fantastic.
idea.
All right.
Thank you so much, Colin.
You're welcome. Yeah. Anytime. Give me a call back and we'll do another one.
Oh, we definitely will.